Okay, we'll call this special city council meeting to order Monday, October 24th, 4 p.m. Roll call. Kirby Moynihan.
Sam Solars.
David Paradise.
Nicole Andrew.
Jessica Bodywell.
Michael Summerfield.
Justin Canas.
Steve Griffin.
Approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I will second.
Further discussion? Ms. Andrea.
Aye.
Mr. Paradise.
Aye.
Mr. Solars.
Aye.
I'll vote yes. Motion passes 4-0. Business. Creekside Hollow.
Yep, you guys are up.
So how does it work here? Do we stand, sit, or?
Whatever you're most comfortable
Whatever
with.
you're comfortable, yep. We
Um,
saw John brought some stuff in, so if you want to set that up for you.
yeah.
It's the same graphics we had in the presented in the packet.
They gave them all like bigger printouts.
What do you want to talk about first, Phil?
Well, there's a few things that, that we thought we'd want to address with you guys in this setting before we come to one of the agenda meetings. And I think that, in general, kind of the approach from us is to look at the possibility of doing some things maybe outside of, I don't know if the norm is the word to use or the way that it's been suggested that we approach so far. And some of it is, some different reasonings as to, what we think makes sense for us to do from a financial feasibility standpoint, and then as it relates to the construction standpoint. And I think that the three main issues were the collector road, the right-of-way for the collector road, size being different than what had been proposed initially or earlier. And so I suppose we could start with that. And what we see on the map here, the blue line, is that what it would be, John?
Yes.
The blue road. So that's the connection points between the collector road in question. And so the original plat was drawn with, I think, 60 foot right away.
Yep, the 2005 era.
Yeah.
Call it the 2005 era plat.
Yeah.
Preliminary plans at that time
Yeah.
had a 60-foot right of way, which would correlate to the red. And now the city standard has changed to, I believe, an 80-foot right of way through
Yeah.
collector streets. So that's, so our blue shows where the 80-foot collector streets in the city would be, which is this project and hypothetically out in the future.
Yeah. And so our question, our approach to it was, if there was a way that we could maintain the original 60-foot right-of-way, both for reasons that it kind of helps with the development too, in terms of the setbacks that we had to work with in terms of like, whether it was trees or just getting the clearances that we needed. And then the fact that it's different than everything else that's around it, whereas we felt like it wouldn't necessarily be like an eyesore or a problem, so to speak, considering that everything else is the original 60-foot right-of-way, and it would only be 80-foot within that section, and then maybe, as John said, some additional stuff that could get added after the fact. So that was one of the things where we thought, just based on if you look at all the red on there and how much of it is that's already there, if it would be not necessarily a problem for that to sort of maintain throughout with what most of which is there now. And so obviously when we were working up, I think we submitted the original drawing with 60 foot.
Yes.
And I think that came out of one of the last meetings where it was, hey, FYI, this was supposed to be 80, because that has changed. And so obviously we redrew that, and I think then, we had some ancillary effects of that kind of came into play. And so the question was, does it really, other than the fact that it's now a new, part of the ordinance, but the question was, would it really be a problem if it stayed at 60 foot? It does create some issues for us to go to 80 feet. And so thereby saying, could we continue with 60 foot, and how might that be seen or addressed or looked at if it stayed that way? And then what might be your input as a group to see that?
You have any thoughts?
Yeah, I can share some thoughts on that, just some background. So the standard was changed back in 2000, I believe it was in the 2008 timeframe. There was a comprehensive transportation plan done. And as part of that comprehensive transportation plan, there was corridors identified for major collector roadways, which would carry a significant amount of traffic. As part of that, the recommendation with that is that major collector roadways would at least be set up for the presence of sidewalks on both sides of the road, as well as a wider roadway itself being at least 38 feet wide, and then the 80-foot right-of-way. The reason for the additional right-of-way width that's recommended on the major collector roadways is for that sidewalk on both sides. As well as potential for, as traffic continues to increase, if you need to put a spot, turn lane or something like that in place at one of the intersections, that there is room to do that without going back and acquiring right away from property owners. In addition to that, if you have properties along there with a fairly busy roadway and such, it does then essentially push your property back further away from the roadway as well. And maybe Steve can have some comments on that too, but the busier the roadway, probably the more desirable it is going to be to have that home a little bit further away from the traffic. So those are kind of some of the background reasons why that is. He's right that we don't have 80 feet on any of these other ones. These other developments were already in place when that change was made. So it's a bit of a unique situation here. My recommendation on the Planning Commission memo was to go with 80 feet, and that was just simply because that is what our standard is. That's initially we should try to follow that. Just because the area to the east doesn't have it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be a good idea to have it here. So I can answer any questions with respect to that.
Can I just see that map?
Get it up or?
Yeah, that works too. What would be some of the big issues with keeping that one at 60 to match with everything else, or I guess keeping it at 80 versus matching it with the other roads in that area? What issues would we run into potentially?
Well, I guess I'm curious because we did have a meeting. Are you guys thinking you will lose lots with going to 80? Or I know initially there was some confusion about which of these roads would require 80, and it was just this roadway here only.
He redrew it and we lost one.
One lot?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the impact from the development standpoint, is a loss of one lot. From a perspective of as far as tying in and making it look, making it appearance wise, you're really not going to notice it, because we're probably only going to require, my recommendation, that we wouldn't necessarily require sidewalk on both sides of the road at this time. We only have it on one side here. It doesn't make sense to put it on both sides. The connection isn't going to be made through here. Now also, the volume of traffic won't be as high as it will be in the future. The idea is that when you look at the comprehensive transportation plan, really the bottleneck of the whole city as a whole was Highway 12, because it is one of the only east-west connection routes. So as development continues to occur up in this north area, it was very important to try to get more east-west connections back and forth through here, just to move that traffic, keep some of that local traffic off of the Highway 12 or off of First Street here, and keep it going back and forth and disperse the traffic throughout more. Can you get by with 60 or 66? I mean, yes, you can. You could very tightly, you couldn't get by with sidewalk on both sides at 60. 66 would be the bare bones minimum. And that would be, that'd be a 38-foot wide roadway to match what's there now. 6-foot boulevard, and then a 5-foot walk on both sides. Oftentimes too, depending on how your trail system's going to lay out and stuff, but you might want a wider sidewalk, or at least plan for a wider sidewalk on one side of the road for you know, kind of a multi-use, having your lower level bicycle users off the roadway onto a sidewalk, then generally speaking, a 8 or 10 foot wide walk or path is desirable. So 66 would get difficult to get that fit in. 80 is plenty of room. 80 is a lot of room. It's planning for the future, but you know, you get one time to do it. Anytime you go back and try to acquire easement to right away in the future, it's very, very, very difficult and becomes very troublesome. So.
And so our thought was too, in addition was, you know, if this were a development that we're probably starting new off one of the north-south roads and was heading either east or west, where the 80-foot right-of-way could be continued all the way through, probably wouldn't even ask for it, but because it's being kind of placed in between existing 60-foot right-of-way, we kind of thought, you know, the 60-foot certainly doesn't take away from anything because that's what's already there and it would certainly match the surroundings. And B, you know, we just sort of felt like there might not be much benefit to that one area anyway. So even if you could do a couple different extra things in that little section, you couldn't do it in the surrounding areas. And so it was kind of like, is there any real benefit to that in that area? You know, because it's not a clear connection from the two east-west points. It's in the middle. So you know, you've got 60 going to 80, back to 60 again, and so in that section, you know, is there really a benefit? And by not being a benefit, it almost becomes more of just, you know, extra expense and extra work for us to not really have a gain for that, you know, that extra investment. And so from that standpoint, you know, it kind of just didn't make sense to us. We know it's the rule, but wondered, you know, what would really be the damage to deviate from that.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor, ask a question to them. What would it, if in order to get the one lot back that you're losing, what would it take at that? Is there one particular location to neck the right of way down to something narrower than 80 feet in a small area that would still be able to get your one lot back?
We lost the frontage in the inside loop here.
So we lost it up here.
This road, this loop road was originally a 50, it went to a 60 as a city standard roadway, instead of being a, you know, the old way was 50 foot right away. So this loop went to from a 50 to a 60, and the collector went from a 60 to an 80. And because we're pinched against the creek, the property line, everything pinched in, and we lost roadway frontage, so we can't get our lot widths in the whole circle. So as everything pinched in, we lost frontage around the, you know, we just don't have any more 80-foot chunks that we can break into a lot. That's why we got constrained.
You know, I mean, I get it. I mean, I get your ordinance and the new. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, if you look at it though, I mean, that's the only blue strip in the whole flipping city. You know, even if you make, when this comes on, even if you make that, I'm just trying to figure out what does that really accomplish, you know, because that's a wide street, you know, yeah, you don't see too many of those. And that was my main reason, you know, and then I don't think we got to that yet. But with the bridge and everything, I mean, that's just it's becoming a tricky stretch of road there.
Mr. Mayor, just one thing to note, that 80-foot standards is a subdivision ordinance requirement for a minor collector. So to move from that, you'd need to actually process a variance. So the planning commission would have to have a hearing, and council would have to do that separately from the plat, just so you know.
So does going to 60, does it bring back that lot that you lose out on?
I'd have to have it recomped for us to see. Well, I know it definitely would go back. We moved the collector to 60 and the loop road to 50. We would definitely get it back. We didn't have very much play. It's very tight right now, so we'd have to resketch that to see if it would work. I mean, to get the lots that we have in there right now, I had to move this road 3 feet, move all these houses 3 feet, we just barely pinched one back in, so it's very, very tight. It's not, we don't have any access right now.
And one thing too, to consider, it's sort of jumping forward a little bit because we identified that creek crossing as its own separate issue to talk about, but as it relates to the right-of-way, so not only the loss of the lot is kind of a collateral damage of the right-of-way, but it also affects the creek crossing, with that being wider than it would need to be at the 60-foot right-of-way. So even if the lot, wasn't necessarily an issue, or if that could be regained somehow, there's still kind of that issue as it relates to the crossing, with the wider right-of-way.
It feels right, I mean, a lot's a lot, but I mean, it's just the pure construction cost. I mean, you guys know, I mean, everything's so expensive now. I mean, that width of road is with blacktop and everything else, and then you got the bridge. I mean, I don't know, if that adds another, dealy bopper in there, but, it's just, it gets expensive to just build it.
So kind of, I think what I'm picking up is you need the collector road to go from 80 back down to 60, and then you need the other road to go from 60 back to 50, correct? Is that what you're looking for?
That would give us additional lot for sure.
That's what we
I have
brought
to
through
read.
planning commission, right?
That's what we brought to planning commission.
Yeah.
And there was the city made comments, and we got approved with
Right.
city conditions.
So that's
So
what,
we have
that's what
this.
came through planning commission.
Planning commission approved this
Yes, with those changes.
with the right-of-way changes.
Right, but this is what we brought to planning commission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is the 80 lots, not the 79.
Correct. But it adjusts for the road sizes.
This one does not.
I thought it.
This is the original sketch.
Yeah, but that's different than what's there, or what's being proposed.
Correct. What you have in your hand is 50-foot right-of-way and
Yes.
60 feet.
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
So that would be ideal, from our standpoint, and again, some of those, getting back to some of those reasons, is it's not sort of the odd one out, so to speak, in comparison to all its neighbors. It's still in line with everything that surrounds it, so it's not a deviation per se from what would seem normal there. It wouldn't feel like it's a change in a direction that is going backwards, from traveling from area to area and getting into a spot where, wow, this feels tighter. It would still be in line with everything that's there now. And so we thought that was one reason that was, made it at least feasible to say, maybe it's something that we can do or consider doing, even though that it would require a variance, or that it would be, different than what the language calls for today.
So what would the transition look like? Yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, the roadway width would change. So what you see out there in the construction, I guess, as far as I wanted to clarify that too, the construction cost, I mean, it's as far as the construction of the roadway itself, that wouldn't change. The roadway width would be 38. I think it's 38 feet, I believe. To match the roadway width over here.
So the roadway.
So the
would stay
roadway would
same
stay the
width.
same. Yeah. So there would be no transition as far as the roadway goes.
Just the amount of right of way.
Yeah.
That we have access to.
Yeah.
Well, having the additional width in the additional sidewalk would make the culvert bigger for a creek crossing.
Right.
Would make them
Longer.
longer. Would make them longer.
We probably need well, who knows, but another one, how we took that change, when they revise it. Probably take another one of those, I think.
What would 70 look like for right of way? You said 60's tight. Would 70 give more room?
70 would be, yes, that would be certainly better than 60 for sure. Yeah, and that would, 70 would, I don't know if that does enough to get you your lot back or not. I mean, the other thing we could look at too, I guess if we could keep it at at 80 and rather compromise on the creek itself and reduce that culvert length, there's nothing to say that we would have to, the city would have to require that culvert length to go out to the edge of the right of way right now. You could shorten that up to build it for what you need for the sidewalk on one side of the roadway and the roadway at this time. And then in the future, just keep in mind then that would be a cost of the project to extend it if you were to ever add sidewalk on the other side of the road. So that'd be something to think about too. I would rather see, to me, to get the easement and the right of way now is more important, because like I say, it's just about impossible to do it after the fact. But definitely 70 would be much better than 60. 60, I would say at least 66 at a bare bones minimum. I mean, just to get sidewalk and minimum sidewalk width on both sides, 5 feet, and a 5 or 6 foot boulevard, which isn't very wide, you're at over 60.
I don't, and this is just my opinion, but I don't necessarily see us needing 2 sidewalks out there. I mean, on both sides of the road at least, but, I mean, I could be wrong and have a minority opinion, but.
No, I kind of agree with you. I mean, just looking at what we already have out there in Forest Creek, I mean, there's sidewalk on one side. I think if you're coming up Cole, north there, if you're gonna go, I don't know. I don't really see any.
And the other trail comes through here.
Yeah, and then the Forest Creek Trail will come through here. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see a need for 2 sidewalks.
So I guess this part of the discussion is kind of what we're looking at, is if we're gonna want 2 sidewalks in the future, or just one side of the road, right? That's kind of what
That
we're
plays
looking at.
I would say that plays a big part in it. That is certainly one thing that plays a big part in it, yeah. The reason that sometimes that's recommended is not necessarily to navigate back and forth or the circulation. It's really so that, if you have quite a busy road, and keep in mind, if this whole area gets developed and then you have a connection from Highway 12 to Clementa, the ADT will increase substantially from what you're seeing out there today. And it's really to serve both homes on both sides. So if you have sidewalk on one side, if it's uncomfortable for the people on the opposite side to cross the road, in mid-block or at those locations, to rather stay on their side of the road. It doesn't mean you have to, but that's the reasoning for the 2 sidewalks, is really to serve the properties that are. And I will say you have a limited number of, I don't know how many driveways you have fronting that roadway there, the collector road. How many do you have? Looks like you have them on both sides.
16 here, in the 16 ballpark-ish.
On both sides, or is it just one?
16 total.
On both sides.
Now you got
Oh, fronting.
fronting, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. This gotta go side, outside. 5, 6. I think this has different. We have different lots. Then 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14,
15?
15. I think there's one more down here. I think it's 16. With the latest sketch we have, I don't have it on the big sheet.
I mean, with where I was looking at on this at least, the majority of the roads are on, or the houses are on one side of the road. That's what I'm seeing.
There'd be more on the south side, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Which is what the existing sidewalk is
On side.
on 7th, so that's great, that's good. That lends itself that you put the sidewalk there on that side. Is that how you guys had it designed?
Yes.
On preliminary
Yes,
plat?
yes, the sidewalk is
south
on the
side.
south.
Yeah.
I mean, with only 4 houses fronting on the other side,
Mhm.
I'd be okay with 1 sidewalk.
With the 80, yeah, that's the newest. This is our latest kind of, so it'd be, on the north, we'd have 1, no, we moved it to 2. 2 houses front the collector on the north. pushed them around and, let's see that. This would be a sidewalk house, or a cul-de-sac house, fronted house, empty, and then Loop Street houses, and then a collector house, and then Loop Street, so it would be minimized. How many front on the 80-foot collector?
The right of way is squeezing your lot sizes? Is that,
Right away, squeezing lot sizes and pushing the houses back into, you know, the woods,
yeah.
more or less.
Because I wonder also what the option of reserving a little easement, give up right of way per se, keep the setbacks from the right of way line, but take a little more easement if you never needed it for,
Well, that's why I was thinking 70.
yeah.
I mean, it kind of meets in the middle with the right of way. 10 feet can be a lot to work with, and if we're only doing one sidewalk,
I would say if you're doing sidewalk only on one side, and that's, you don't foresee there ever being sidewalk on both sides, 70 feet would be adequate.
what are your thoughts on 70? You probably haven't run it for 70, but
Yeah, I don't have,
Yeah.
we haven't had a sketch completed.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Well, I mean, 70 would be better than 80.
Definitely the right direction. Maybe another question too would be if you guys only foresaw the one side sidewalk, would 60 be adequate still yet, you know, with the one sidewalk? Would there be the need for the extra 10 at that point? Even though it's certainly better than 80, no doubt. But does 60 do the trick, so to speak, with what's foreseen there?
I mean, I see how we can get away with the extra, if it was 75 feet of easement versus on each side, but then I think once we start running into an easement instead of a right-of-way, then houses are getting closer to where that easement would be if something were to need to go there. I think the little extra room to play with future-wise is, I don't know. We run into some issues with trying to work outside of old parameters.
This city's got some challenges from the past, you know, I mean, design issues, I'll give you that. I'm sure you guys already know that.
I'd feel comfortable with 70, for sure. I don't think I feel all that comfortable with 60. 70, I would definitely feel comfortable with.
I think I agree to that too. Just because at least it does give us a little bit more, what's what I'm looking for? Better safe than sorry, I guess, for the future.
Flexibility.
Yeah.
And Steve, still at 70 would be a variance, correct?
Yeah, you still have to process a variance.
I mean, can we ask for that same time, bring it to a class? Or is that separate, the variance? I know it's separate, but can we do it?
Yeah, you just gotta go back to planning commission with it, we gotta do a hearing at planning commission, so, right now it's just scheduled to go, would otherwise go, the plan would go to council, but.
The way that they approved it with those changes right now,
Oh, I got
that would be, but to change it down would have to be
you.
a separate hearing.
Right.
So we'd have to,
Any kind of changes would require going back.
timing wise? Next planning commission scheduled for the 9th. I don't know if you can get a hearing notice for that.
There will be enough time for
It
that.
would have to be published this week by Thursday, like I'd have to know by 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Or the possibility of pushing it, the planning meeting to the following week. You'd have to talk to the commission members, but
Yeah, well, that would just, I don't know how that would work with a public hearing, having it on an off-scheduled meeting.
They'd have to call for the special, but then they could schedule a hearing as long as you get the notice out.
Yeah.
You'd be okay, but.
That'll be a variance.
Okay.
Would that push you guys further out on anything if you have to, if you do another hearing?
Yeah, that's just what we prefer, I don't want to go back to planning. Well, we'll figure that out. The main thing was I just wanted to visit with you all and just get, kind of where we were coming from and, just kind of see how we had to move forward with it. Because we would like to move forward with this sooner than later, so.
Yeah, for sure.
That was the whole thing about today, so appreciate your time. So we'll figure that one out, I'll let you know. I know tomorrow by 10 is not gonna happen. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll talk and then
Okay.
and then I guess,
The bridge or?
yeah, the next thing was, and Philly, you can take it, but the next thing would be the crossing.
Crossing. So yeah, the way that we had submitted it even to planning commission was to ask for city participation in the cost sharing of the crossing. And obviously the thought process behind that as well was that, some original design contemplations that we had were that the creek crossing was a lot of red tape, a lot of cost, a lot of extra expense that we thought, well, maybe we don't need to do that. If we have two access points from two different locations, then we could essentially have like two halves of the plat, two halves of the property, and not have it connect. But obviously it was, made clear to us that the chances of getting that approved without a connection were pretty much slim and none. And so we thought, okay, well, understanding that it's probably has to be that way, would the city then share in that cost, since it's something that is also for the greater good of the city in creating that collector road and having that, complete passage instead of having the two halves. Because it is a significant cost, that creek crossing, far more than any of us had actually thought it would be in the beginning. Which is also why when we talked about the right-of-way, and we thought if we had to include that as well, that cost only gets greater, but if we can work with that, staying at that 60 range, I'm not sure if that's what you were suggesting, but at the crossing. But either way, whether that happens or not, or whether it goes from 60 to 70 or 60 to 80, we definitely wanted to approach the concept of the city sharing some of the cost with that crossing, the expense of the crossing.
See, and I never know who sees what, but, this was what we were gonna originally come in with. We did not have a crossing plan. I mean, we just thought we could come here, and then, meetings with staff, and became apparent that we were gonna have to build a crossing. And then, so it's a DNR waterway, and, we did all that, and the hydrology, and, I mean, it's, by putting that in, I mean, it's a big number. It started out, it was, around 550, they came up with different designs, and what we did last one was three and a quarter or something, but it's still a lot of money. So, and again, I mean, not fighting or anything. It's just something that we didn't think, we needed. And I mean, I guess, you know, where I'm coming from, to me, it's a overall collector street that services a lot more, you know, for the city, and I just thought, you know, we can build it, but I mean, I guess we would like, you know, to request that the city maybe help us out with that. And I mean, I had John just kind of put together, and you know, we're not asking for all of it, but I had him put together, you know, surrounding neighborhoods, like, which kind of comes up with, you know, a usage thing. And, you know, so, again, you know, John did this, so I don't, but whether we debate it, don't debate it, but, you know, we were looking for some kind of cost sharing in the construction of that crossing. And I guess that's the other big thing. And then, you know, talking to Justin and stuff, I mean, timing's involved. I mean, I get where he's coming from. We had come with a phasing plan that, you know, again, I didn't, you know, if we build the crossing, you know, we had envisioned some kind of phasing plan. We were gonna start up here. And we weren't gonna, we're not building on this road, we're not building that bridge right away, and then, you know, I get it. The city's concerned if that ever gets done, et cetera, et cetera. So we just have to figure out, you know, even from a cost standpoint, you know, I wanted to have the timing discussion, all that at the same time. So, and we didn't make big ones of this, but I did, John put together, you know, diagrams that show, you know, if we were to build, or if we had to build that crossing right away, I mean, you can kind of see, I mean, there's a lot more going into it than, I mean, there's a lot of pipe going in. And, I mean, you know, we all learned from the past, you know, we try to minimize that market risk, and, you know, I just don't want to do more than what's financially viable for the project itself. And that's why I just wanted to have this discussion kind of all at once. Not only the cost sharing, if you guys would be open to that, but some kind of agreement on the timing of that being built. And I don't know, John, does the new plan, well, that's right, we didn't do it. The new plan, would our phasing change with that?
It'd be, well, we were requesting something similar as the
Yeah.
green, you know. The sanitary sewer is right here, and we access every house on here, but I think 2 or 3 can flow this way. So, you know, build the sewer, build the storm sewer. The most economical way to get in here and build houses is to start with the green. But that doesn't, you know, solve the city's issue of wanting the full east-west connection. So,
Right.
and that's kind of what we showed with the white with the pink on here. If we stayed with the phase 1 of this area, and we did make the connection, we'd be building this pink, all that pipe, the crossing, the roadway, a bunch of services, you know, ahead of time without having houses on it. And then our second option was, well, let's build the houses on the east side of the creek, and then we'll have to put all the sanitary sewer through the western side of the property. So with either sort of way to do it, we got a lot of infrastructure to put in.
Neither is preferable.
Yeah. So there's some catch-22s that create possibly a scenario for us that doesn't make financial sense to really sort of set ourselves up for failure, and a lot of upfront fees where even if you brought all the lots to market to surround that, they'd never sell that quickly. So you wouldn't want to bring on that much at once anyway. And so if you looked at it from a standpoint of bringing on a portion, even a third, you kind of want to keep that cost in correlation with what you're bringing to market. So if you're bringing a third to market, you kind of want that cost to stay at a third. Whereas making that full connection, we have such a huge outlay of cash to create that connection, but yet a small access to revenue based on what would be available to sell. And so, if you take away the language of whether it's ordinance related or if it's just city recommended, if you take that away, this would be the most economically feasible approach to it. It would make the most sense. And, so the question becomes, why do this now? And then what those answers are to those questions as to why, and then how maybe we can facilitate some answers to, how or why that may not be the issue or the problem if it doesn't happen now, but then it makes certainly way more sense to not just go crashing in all at once like that, and it, not to say that it would fail, but it sets us up for the potential of failure, to where the market doesn't keep up with a sale pace that allows the cost to go in all up front. And so the carry becomes greater than, the sale revenue. And if and when that happens, that's bad for both parties. It's certainly bad for us, it's bad for the city. And so, I think even from a standpoint of both of us entering this from a win-win scenario, it's not so much for us to get our way, it's so much for us to do it in a manner that actually has the greatest chance of being successful from a marketability standpoint.
So if looking at this, and got this one here with phase 1 now becomes phase 3, would your plan be to make that crossing on phase 1 or do that on phase 2? If I were to look at this as building your 16 houses here, not doing that crossing yet until you start building here, is my thought process. Does that help you guys out financially wise of not having to build that crossing until this is pretty much done with phase 2?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that would work. I mean, our original, we wanted to come this way. But I think what you just said, I mean, the key is we just don't want to have to put all that pipe in the ground and build all that street and the bridge
For sure.
in the first phase.
No, but I think that building out where you have phase 3 there becomes phase 1,
Yeah,
not building the
Right.
bridge there yet,
yeah,
just building out phase 1, get those sold, start the building in
Yeah.
phase 2. End of phase 2 is when you build that bridge street in.
right.
And
And that's
then
something-
we get to connect, because the main thing is, and I'll just tell you from emergency planning position, is we need to be able to get through here.
Right.
And so it's easier for us if you build on this side first where there's already connection,
Sure.
the 7th,
Yeah,
rather than building up here, we're still have to go all the way around town to take care of these houses here. So I think best for both worlds, you guys doing that phase 2, towards the end of phase 2, that's where you build that bridge.
and you know what, I think that works, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we would have, that's something we talked about, I mean, I know it was your concern, and I think we could agree to that, with phase 2, that would get built.
Because then you also have the issue of Forest Creek, you don't have machinery coming in and
Right.
going through their neighborhoods.
And that was
Keep
my-
them happy.
Right.
Right,
And that
Tim?
was-
Yep.
There you go.
I was gonna bring that up too, is that, I mean, at that point, you're talking 30 to 60 houses that now, before the bridge goes up. So, I mean, if you can go the other direction, I do like that idea.
Okay, hang on.
Like this,
That was
this one,
my question.
you have to drag sand. You have to drag sand carry that whole distance to make that work.
Because there's only 3 that would come on over there.
Yeah, the 3
The sanitary can't connect on the 7th?
sanitary, these 2 or 3 houses can get into this sanitary system.
Okay.
That's it, this is all downhill, and that, they all flow through here. So if we were to do this phase 1, we have to pull sanitary
Yeah.
This
isn't
deep enough.
I should let him
the entire distance.
That's why that one, I mean, I told him to draw it up. If we went with that plan, we'd have to do all this. It'd be sheet 2,
Okay.
the sanitary, because sanitary's gotta come from up here.
And, yeah, the other way, sheet 1 right, where we build phase one west, but we'd have to install all that infrastructure east to make it, the emergency connection fully committed there. I mean,
Right.
that's a lot of infrastructure to install.
Right, I mean, I get where you're coming from with, 'cause I mean, how many lots are in the first, I can't remember.
30.
Well,
20.
Oh, this one's
20?
I think I thought it was 30, 30, and 20.
Yeah, it's 30 and 20.
Oh, yeah, 30. I don't think
I didn't put the numbers on there. It's like it's 30 something, and 20.
Okay.
30, 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not on, I mean, on top of the emergency stuff, but, I mean, that's 60 houses before the bridge goes in now, and that's 2 cars per house per day going out that road.
But I don't necessarily think that we would be at that point before we started the bridge crossing though, based on what you just said. Because I think there would certainly be, the projection that we certainly actually wouldn't want to be fully sold out of the first 2 phases before starting the third. We'd want to be starting that third phase so that we're able to, without a hitch in the plan, be able to go from 2 to 3 so that we're really kind of forecasting based on the sales of 1 and 2 that we're ready, that phase 3 is ready to go by the time, so that we don't have a huge gap in between availability of market or lots, during the construction of it. So there would be, and it's hard to say what that would be exactly because, let's just say hypothetically we go with phase 1 at the northwest corner of the property. And, phase 2 is going to be somewhat tied to the success of phase 1, And so it's kind of that domino effect where the more sales that we have, the more product that's going in there, more traffic, that sort of thing, is more than likely going to speed up the process of phase 2 and 3 to keep up with the demand. If the demand is not there, in other words, that would be the only thing that would stop us from going phase 2 and 3 would be slow demand or low demand, but then that would also mean that there's not a lot of houses or traffic or activity in the first phase yet, simply because it's not keeping up with some sort of pace. And so it is interconnected in that sense that the more houses, the more activity, the more cars that are there, the faster we need to create phase 2 and 3. And then, of course, the opposite effect is the same, to where...
And I think that's where the concern comes in, is that there's not that activity if the market turns the other way. And then now it's, most of phase 1 is done, but then now you've got 20 to 30 extra houses that are all going through that one access point in Forest Creek. I think that's where our concern comes from an engineering standpoint.
And I get that. And we talked, Justin, we talked about it, and I get that.
So
I mean, that's why I just wanted to discuss, how we, because I get it, but, I mean, I hope you guys can respect, this part too, so I'm just trying to figure out how we make it all work,
So except for the cost of the bridge crossing, which I know is still
Yeah,
hanging there, but
right.
why wouldn't you make a single phase that just follows the connection all the way from Cole over to 7th? Looks to me like, at least in the original design, there were 34 houses. Some of those faced the side street, I know, and so not directly on that route, but 34 houses that actually had frontage or side frontage on that road, make the connection all the way through. And you get your sewer starting from the northwest to serve that line, and then you build the side streets as phase 2 or phase 3, side streets and the cul-de-sacs and stuff coming in as second and third phase. So that whole road that has frontage, lots fronting on it would still, it seems to me, and like I said, I'm not a developer, I'm not an engineer, but except for that crossing area, you're building street and utilities that you would be using all the way through, it seems.
The tough part about that, and just again from a financial standpoint, is that that corridor, obviously with all the utilities going down, that's the
Most expensive.
most expensive part to build.
That's the problem, I mean, it's just, it's
Yeah.
so.
And the
front-end
downside,
intense.
to answer your question about, even though there's lots that front that, as they relate and compare to the other lots in the neighborhood, those are more than likely the least
Least
expensive
desirable.
lots, least desirable, least expensive, whereas the cul-de-sac lots, the creek lots, the wooded lots would be more the premium lots. And so you almost have to.
You always like to bring on, how do I, some bad with good,
A
some
mix,
say,
yeah, a
you know.
mixture of, what we would refer to as standard lots versus some premium lots.
There you go.
So, yeah, so that there's, but then there's also that mixture of revenue, because you've got some of the premium lots that'll help offset. And so what makes a lot of sense, again, from a financial standpoint, is to have that combination of premium lots in with, the amount of extended utility. And so it is a tough thing, and we get where we're all at, that we're trying to find a middle ground, but it is very tough to do the basic, almost all of the utility extensions, and then, with very few lots, but even to do that at the same time is kind of like the secondary curveball there, because again, under circumstances where it wasn't so much a need to have that connection, you just wouldn't bring it all on at once like that. It would just be kind of a potential disaster, or at least, could be.
How many lots would you be looking at putting in before the crossing would go in?
Well,
Well, and again, I mean, when we laid this out, I mean, this, I guess, when talking amongst us, I mean, this was what we thought the perfect world would be, we'd do this first, this second, and I think, I think we could all agree to that, we could bring this on with the second phase. I don't think anybody's opposed to that. And I don't know, John, I mean, I should shut up because I'll get us in trouble, but, it's beyond my pay grade, so, I mean, maybe if we could work together, could we clip some of these up here so we don't bring on so many? So that gets around their concern with adding all these and just bring on more, does that present any issues
Well-
that I don't know about?
Well, sanitary starts here,
Yeah.
and my
Well,
storm
where we
sewer is
put-
down here, so,
What do we clip it like right in here or something?
I mean, yeah, that could be, we could do it that phase.
Might be losing some of those premium lots though.
few of them. But if we're not going with the full extension of the,
It's just bigger challenge for you, Matt.
yeah, right.
I mean, would that help? I mean, if we're only bringing on, if I count it right.
I mean,
We'd probably be bringing on 18 versus 30.
my feeling is if you keep it the way you have it here with phase one, going into phase two, and you say phase two, and you say, we are gonna have that, we'll connect it, we'll get the crossing done in phase two. I don't see personally an issue with there, because as long as with the start of phase two, that crossing's going in, that opens it up for us.
How many years is this phase plan? Is this over 3 years, 5 years?
Well, I mean, and everybody you talk to these days has different viewpoints, but, I think if it would have stayed the way it was, I really viewed this as 3. I think, just given what's going on with everybody, I do think next year might be a little bit slower, but I'm definitely not in the gloom and doom group, because, and Philly can probably speak more to it than, I mean, he sees it every day, but there's still, once people get over this rate stuff, and once the rate stuff shakes out, there's still a demand for housing, there's a need for housing, and I don't think that's going away. And once this rate stuff shakes out, I think she's coming back even stronger, roaring than before personally.
Yeah, I've been talking to some mortgage guys that have said literally a year from a week ago, those rates will look real good,
Yeah.
So,
So to answer your question, we view this probably like a 3-year, so maybe we might have to go 3.5, 4 now, but I don't see it any longer than that.
But that's at full completion, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And
What,
that's-
what would be the issue with making what is currently phase 3, making that the second phase? So that the connection goes through after phase 1, you have all those wooded frontage lots in phase 2.
We'd still have to run all this.
You would, but I mean, you're gonna have to run it all through at some point anyway, but I'm thinking the best of trying to do both worlds here of phase 1 going in, getting the volume in to get the sales going.
Yeah.
Connecting it with that part is phase 2. Now the bridge is in, the houses are up, and then you fill in as you go.
I think, so if we were to do phase 1, something over here, and then this be 2, we'd have to build the collector down, the collector across. So then all you'd have left would be
To fill in
this
everything.
this little bit of fill-in.
Mhm.
I mean, that, I don't,
Bring the whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting to be not very much left
Yeah,
doing it that way. You might as well just,
yeah. I mean, again, I appreciate, where the city's coming from. It's just, from our viewpoint, it was what made logical sense in trying to minimize, the risk for everybody, so to say. That's why we laid it out the way we did this way. And again, I mean, I don't, just wanted to have the discussion because, I appreciate your position. I think we're open to anything. I'm just trying to figure out, I don't want to waste time. Like when we come back into you guys, I want you to kind of like what you're going to see so we don't have to keep coming back and forth, so to say. So, I mean, if you guys got thoughts and then again, I don't, we haven't got to that yet. Maybe you don't want to go there yet, but I mean, the cost thing to me is a big thing because, again, I'm more of a numbers guy. I mean, Justin, don't get mad at me.
You make your own pitch.
I really thought this thing worked without a crossing, so I mean, that's what I thought, and when this all came on, I'm thinking, well, I mean, that's a major collector street. I just thought that it was fair to ask that the city maybe participate somehow in that bridge crossing. So I guess those are the two things, the phasing, how you guys would like to see it brought on, and then if we could have discussion about that crossing. Then just for good news, we don't have to talk about trees because if that last thing got done, I think we're good. So you can cross that one off, if that helps at all.
The question is, it helps you, so.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, it was, those numbers, man, yeah, the astronomical, I'm going, where are we gonna put that many trees? Wow.
We could have been.
You weren't, so you didn't want to build tree houses back here?
Oh, well, we must have all the trees in town, man. So those are the two things, that if we can get guidance on, I mean, I guess that's what we're looking for.
And still my biggest concern is just that one way in and one way out.
Yeah, see, it'll get pretty busy in Forest Creek, I think.
We will get built this in there.
Again, I mean, would you be open if we cut this down, don't bring on so many, just so we could start up here? And then phase 2 will come down the rest of the way? I mean, is that something?
I would definitely be more open to that.
Not so many houses.
Right. Does that present any challenges, Jim?
well, we build
If we just bring on fewer lots up here so we don't bring all of
sure,
them on?
this first strip, and then
Yeah.
phase 2 would be all the way across.
Well, no, this is still gonna be 3, but we come down and build the bridge and,
Well, if you're gonna build the bridge and make a connection, you gotta build the whole thing.
all the way through.
Yeah, if they wanna come from here, all the way to here, we have to install a whole
Well,
strip.
I'd rather deal with that. Whether we bring this on or something, that's, we'll just see how we get. But I mean, that would make more sense to build that at that time than it does up front.
So build, let's just call it 20.
I mean, build less lots here to, you know, address the number coming in. And then phase two, we put it in and how much we do down there, we'll just see what Margaret dictates. But
Mhm.
it would be better incurring that later on than all this up front.
Right.
Because, again, I mean, the one entrance, one exit, I mean, we don't know what's gonna happen in 3 years. I mean, everything could just crash and, you know, then we're stuck with 30-some homes trying to get out that one thing, and then, you know, phase 2 and 3, you know, gets pushed out another 10 years or whatnot. I'm just trying to,
I hope not, I don't think I got.
I hope not too, but
Well, I
you never
can,
know.
I can say this, and I know you just probably threw that number out there, but if we sold 30 houses in the next, you know, year and a half, that would not be like bad news. You know,
Right.
We wouldn't want to put the brakes on if we were
Right,
doing
no,
that.
yep, no, I get
So
it.
I think the correlation between how much activity, traffic, and housing and stuff like that is gonna be directly related to if there's more going on in phase one, that means the bridge is more than likely gonna happen sooner. If the bridge can't happen sooner, it means there's not enough going on in phase one, so it's almost gonna be, they're tied together. So I can't imagine a scenario where we have all kinds of houses and people living in phase one, but yet we don't wanna keep going. You know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, I think if we can limit what we have in phase one, you know, definitely feel a lot more comfortable than going that way. That's just mine.
In a perfect world, I like David's idea of doing it in the reverse order, just based on the response time. How long does it take the fire department to get out to the Cole Street right now?
Yeah, but we know we don't live in a perfect world, so.
I know.
You know what flows downhill. That seems to be the problem.
What? Keep my comments to myself. We had that discussion at the last council meeting, so.
Yeah, we did.
I think the biggest concern of any of this though is the bridge, and they had brought up the financial sharing of a third of the cost. So that was roughly somewhere around 100,000 or so, right?
Give or take a couple pennies.
I believe
I think we were
the
saying
culverts-
we would contribute a third, am I right?
Right.
And
That's what
we
the
would ask the
draft
city for 2/3.
That's what we were trying to show here based on, and again, whether, people want to argue that, I mean, but we believe that ours was a third, so we were looking for a 2/3 contribution and we paid a third for the costs. And I think the second one we got, they redesigned the structures that were going in there. And we could, I can't remember if I gave that one to you, Justin, but I think that one came in like at was it 306 or 324, something like that.
3-something.
It was right around 300, 320, something like that. But that was down from the first one, it was like 500.
So the city's contribution would be somewhere around 210,
Or just call it
15,000.
200 or whatever, I mean. And that, again, was based on this, you know, from the surrounding neighborhoods and the number and what we believe the usage would compute out to.
My thought is that in the past, the city has put a lot of money into past developments that are now gone and done with, but we put a lot of money into developments years ago when the housing market was really hot before, and then, of course, things cooled off and the city ended up fronting all of that when developers, you know, weren't around any longer, and my concern would be that the city would be putting, you know, all of that money out there, and then we're stuck with waiting for the third phase of a development 5 years from now to put a bridge in when we've thrown that amount in there. And then of course that's 5 years from now, so that 200,000 is 350 or 400 depending on inflation at that time.
So now you've just made our argument. Why we don't wanna put it all in at once. But to go back to, by the time we get to that bridge crossing, you know, obviously, that means that,
You would have the thoroughfare though.
yeah, the phases are moving at a pace that we all would want them to, because like I said, you know, if things are dead in the early phases, slow, whatever, clearly we're not gonna wanna push forward, at least immediately. But if things are moving, you know, then obviously, so trying to find different ways to say the same thing, but you know, we're not gonna sort of create too much activity for ourselves or for the city if the market's not moving enough to where it would continue and complete. So, you know, the numbers up front would be, and if we didn't do the crossing until phase 2, you know, the city wouldn't have that extension out there either. And then, you know, at the time where we would foreseeably want to make that connection, that means, you know, from this point looking forward, that means things are looking good at that time that we say, hey, we need to push forward, we need more inventory. You know, because things are moving quick enough, or at least at a pace that is good enough for us to say we need that extra inventory. And so I do see that going hand in hand, and I don't see a scenario to where, you know, we've added so much, we're real heavy on the northwest side, but yet don't want to make the connection. It just doesn't, I can't see it making sense that way.
So just a couple thoughts for you guys to think about. You know, generally speaking, you want to try to have development pay for development, and not citizens pay for development. So there is cases where the city might provide credits or some sort of contribution for, say, upsizing of a water or sewer. But how that's regulated generally and how that program is set up is usually there's a program in place to recoup those costs from future developments. So there's, for instance, such a thing as a trunk area fee that every development pays on a per acre basis, pays a per acre fee and goes into a fund, and then really that fund is what's essentially paying for upsizing of a, say, an 8-inch standard water main to a 12-inch water main. So there's that. We don't have anything set up for stormwater. And I'm not, honestly, I know from a sewer and water perspective that that's a utility that can be set up, but from a stormwater perspective, I'm not familiar. I don't even know what the legality of being able to do that and charge developers. So I know that becomes, you would want to check into the legal basis of being able to do that. You know, there's some case law out there I know about certain things, and I'm not sure that there's a mechanism to do that or not.
As far as the city's portion, whatever's decided on that, there's no state funding that we could get to help pay for any of that. I've already reached out to our state rep and state senator, and there's no funding the city could get. So this 200-some thousand would have to come out of the general fund.
And you know, again, I'm not, we're not sitting here like a developer just trying to wring every last. I mean, that's not really the case. I mean, I stand, whether right or wrong, I mean, I firmly stand by what we brought. I don't think we need it. So if we have to build it, I mean, I truly believe the city benefits in other ways. And I don't think that that's a justifiable cost just for this project. I mean, I think it's a fair request that we ask the city about it. Now, you guys can certainly say no, I'm just trying to explain where we're coming from. Because that is a main collector street that is gonna and again, there's a lot of past sins that went on here. There's a lot of one-end, dead-end things going on, and it is gonna benefit the city.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think it meets the classic definition of the city paying for development. In other words, if it wasn't for the crossing, for example, we wouldn't ask the city to contribute to any of it. And it's just the fact that it is, the crossing is what completes the, you know, the collector street, the connection. And so, it's the only reason we would ask for contribution on that is simply because, like Bob said, it's a cost that we think we could do without if we develop this a different way, the parcel. But being that the city wants it connected more so than we do, that's where sort of the logic on our part becomes, you know, if you guys contribute, we'll contribute as well. But where we think it kind of moves away from the standard definition of just a developer coming in and saying, hey, will you guys help pay our bills? Because if there were the bills of any other thing related to any other aspect of the development, we wouldn't necessarily, you know, ask for.
We know better than that.
Yeah, we know the answer. But definitely does, you know, especially if that's how the city wants to see that come to fruition. I mean, it definitely.
So, and I think John probably spent more time on it than I did, but, you know, the crossing was a surprise, and then when it was a DNR, you know, the DNR, public waterway with their requirements and what you gotta build, that's when it just got stupid, you know, it's like, wow. So that was just kind of a surprise.
I'll just throw out the position that we took when we originally looked at this was that, you know, the crossing makes this a unique thing, but the minor collector part of this is something that every developer would normally contribute, and the developments to the east have contributed their share of the 38-foot wide road, and without asking this property to pay for that leading up to it. So minor collectors get built into development projects as part of a fundamental, as a basic development cost. Major collectors are different because there's no frontage on them, and you know they're a bigger road. But in my view, the thing that is counter to that approach is that if there were no creek here, that road would go through as a minor collector. It would be built to our minor collector standards, and there would be no contribution because it's just like any other minor collector road that has been built and the developments around it. So I know that the cost elevates it here, but just as a conceptual collector road, there wouldn't be any normal issue from the review side.
You mentioned earlier that if you were building phase 1 and 2, as you've indicated on here, northwest and then in the center, if it was building a pace, you could not foresee a scenario where you wouldn't want to build that connection. If you were paying 100% of this connection, could you foresee not wanting to build that connection, even if you built 59 homes west of it?
No, I mean, obviously the cost, there's two different conversations there in terms of cost and then how that affects the market price of the lot. But in terms of just sales in general, if under any circumstance, I don't see, even if we had to pay the 100% of the crossing cost, if the sales are moving at that clip to where we have phase 1 and 2 either sold out or on the foreseeable projection to be sold out, we would still want to start that final phase for sure. For sure.
How sold are we on the percentages of what we would pay and what you guys would pay?
I don't, nothing is, again, nothing's cast in stone. We want to have the discussion philosophically with you. I mean, Philly's probably more marketing guy, I might be more numbers guy. I mean, I think, it's in everyone's best interest to make this thing work. And I mean, when the cost gets so stupid, then the lots are priced at a number that doesn't work for the builders, and they're not going to sell. And I mean, you just try to eliminate all that because that's not good for anybody. So, you know, again, I mean, we're firmly committed to this thing. I mean, I'm excited about it. I mean, you know, preliminary interest, I mean, there's a lot of people that want to get the hell out of Data, you know? So, I mean, you know, I'm excited about it. I mean, we're actually looking at other stuff out here. I mean, you know, this would be the one we get going with and try and create momentum, and, you know, we'd like to be out here for a while. So, but I mean, I also want to try and give it the best shot we can, and, you know, I won't say again, you guys know where I'm at, and again, just a conceptual discussion with you on where we're at and what we think, and you can certainly say no, and then we'll just figure that out.
I mean, I do agree with you that I think it does benefit the city having that come all the way through, just for the fact of Forest Creek would have another way out of there versus nothing being there. Hard time with the cost, you know, if we could come somewhere to an agreement on that, I think we kind of, you know, cut down on that 80-foot Collector Street side, you know, and make that a little bit more manageable. I think if we could come to some kind of agreement here as far as, you know, percentage of what we.
Right, and I think that's why, you know, I kind of want to talk about all that together, because I do think there's a lot of room to talk there. It's just when you get hit, I mean, when you get hit with the wider road, and I mean, she's a serious, I mean, that's a serious road. And
Right.
the bridge, I mean, she just off, I mean, all of a sudden that thing became like an interstate, you know? So again, we're not looking for any answers. I mean, I guess, you know, just kind of your guys' thoughts, and then maybe what, because we would like to keep moving here. I mean, I don't like wasting time nor your time. I mean, I just wanted to know what to come in with that, you know, you can certainly think about and talk about any kind of cost participation. I just wanted these other things to have guidance about what John could, you know, draw a final to be able to present to you guys to keep this thing moving. Because we definitely would want to go on this in the spring.
Mhm. I mean, right now, I don't have a concern with starting phase one in the spring, the way you guys have it laid out personally. I think it's where it needs to be, and you know, we try to come up with different ideas to start it elsewhere, but we understand the challenges there. Moving forward, like I said, the biggest thing is getting that crossing filled in. I mean,
Do you
that'd be
think,
huge.
then based on that, is that, do we just deal with that in phase two, or should we all agree to it up front? I mean, how would you guys
I
like?
mean, I'd like to figure out a way that we can make it work. I don't have that answer
Yeah.
personally for you.
Yeah,
You know, I'd like to have that discussion as a group and
Yeah.
with city staff and
okay,
engineers and see what it looks like and what is legality wise we could do and all those things to make it work,
okay,
you know.
Yeah.
I can't give you an answer on how much I would say I'm willing to give you guys.
Sure.
But again, I want to have that discussion as a group and see what it is, because I do think you know, to Sam's point, to your point, it is a benefit to the city. And I want to do it right with them, and if they can help bring in more things to this town, I'm all about that too. I think this is a little gem of an area that's going to be growing, and we need a lot of help and people that want to actually work with us.
well, it's helpful.
Well, thanks again for you guys for your time and thanks for
Appreciate
coming
it.
in, hearing us out. Yeah, you bet.
Absolutely.
So you guys be all right kind of with the green?
I personally am.
Did you say starting phase one with the green area,
Yeah.
right? Are you altering the area or keeping it the
That's
same?
what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I mean, just my point of view here is I'm-
Just taking a poll here.
Yep, I'm not a huge fan of starting that big of an area with that one way out.
Understood.
But I do get that some of those, probably your money makers, are gonna be probably ones you're gonna have to take out of there.
The cul-de-sac can be the one that comes out.
With the cul-de-sac, probably gonna be
That's
the,
good profit.
The big money maker's the one on the opposite side of the cul-de-sac, right up against the
Tree line?
creek side.
or not the creeks.
Those 4 lots.
Those are the big,
Oh, well, pretty good here.
I
A
mean,
few less houses probably, and I'm on board with that.
Okay. Okay.
to your point, when you guys said if you're selling them, you're moving on to the next phase.
Right.
Right.
So,
And then just.
to me, the more you have to offer, the more you can sell, the faster we get to the phase 2, the faster we get to the, collector street being
Right.
completed.
Right.
So, that's the way I look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys? Just do a poll. Be formal. I don't want to do anything wrong, I know.
Well, if I had my way, you'd start at phase 3 first and then work. But I know that's not in the cards here. And I get what you're saying. The more you have to offer, the faster you get to go. I'm still conflicted because, I know it's gonna be a lot of traffic coming through there.
I get it.
There will be complaints regardless. no
Yeah,
matter
I
what.
know. It's just, it's the
That's
nature
just
of the
life.
beast.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. Yeah, I'd say go for it.
Okay.
I think the faster we can get it all connected, the better off we're all gonna be.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
That's kinda where I'm at.
You said spring, right?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, with some houses knocked off, I think it'd be manageable. But the conversation of when we would do the through for the collector would have to take place, at least that conversation would have to be sooner rather than later, so that we're not all, and I know that's part of the money piece too of some of that, but I would like to have that conversation and maybe in even a smaller setting of some type, but I think that conversation should be had maybe even before ground break about when that crossing is going to be put in, because I'm really worried about the amount of cars that are gonna go through Forest Creek and the response time that it's gonna take, or that another town might have to respond to an emergency out there. So,
I respect it. Okay.
In the discussion, a lot of council members and your team have talked about making that connection during the second phase. I think from some of the words I heard David say, that when he hears that, what he's hearing is at the beginning of the second phase. Is that what you guys would envision? Because otherwise we're talking at the end of the second phase, where you'd have 59 homes, and the marginal return on that third phase may not outweigh the construction of that connection. So just if we're having an open discussion, are we talking about phase 1, then connection and phase 2 simultaneously, or phase 1, phase 2 with the connection being when you get down there?
No, I think we could live with that, build the connection with phase 2.
I would think so.
Yeah.
They're gonna say, maybe you say, you guys can only build 25 homes before you make the full connection. So then we're gonna have to say, all right, this is 25 we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're gonna make the connection, and then we're gonna bring on these. And then we'll fill in it. Once you make the connection, you got a lot to spend right there.
Yeah, and something like that could be part of like a
Some sort
developer's
of-
agreement,
absolutely.
how many homes they can build before
Yeah,
that
right.
connection.
That'll have to
You
be
know?
agreed on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some-
I think we'd definitely be open to that.
So that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful.
No, I just gotta go back because I'm slow. Plus, he makes more money than I do. So if we do this, do we have to have, because I'm just being honest, I don't wanna go back to planning commission. How does that lay out? If we have to go back, you said these streets changed up here?
Well, if we're gonna, right now planning commission approved city conditions to 80
Right.
on this road.
Yep.
So if we're gonna,
So if we build anything different, we gotta go
we
back.
gotta go back.
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
It's just, it's not, you're not really building anything different, you're just plating, it's just,
Yeah,
it's just plating the right of way.
Right, yeah. So,
And that's mostly phase 2 stuff, right? With that,
Yeah, I'll actually.
so I mean, really.
But the preliminary plat, you would be approving the preliminary.
Yeah.
Well, as of right now, I guess as it stands, the preliminary plat's approved
Yep.
with 80 feet of right of way.
Could they, you know, yeah, so I mean, if we can get that get that on the board for planning and zoning.
They're
So that's
talking,
what they
I mean,
want to do.
that's, if they wanna go less than 80.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
70 or
So-
whatever, they would have to go back to planning and zoning.
so like I said, tomorrow's not gonna happen.
Yep.
So if,
Maybe for the next week?
Well, I'll go back and have my guy lay out
When would
a
be
7
the-
foot and then a,
yeah, when would be the next
We have to
submission
post public notices with at least 10 days of notice,
prior to
so,
the next meeting?
that meeting would then be on the 16th, so we'd have to post that first week in November.
Once you put sidewalk in, you gotta go 60.
So we'd have to have it to you like next week.
That'd be pending.
Next week, we'd have to have it to
Yeah.
you. Okay. And then after that, then when would be the next council meeting?
Then the next.
Would it be the
council-
December one? then?
Yeah,
That'd be
December.
Okay.
I think it's December 12th. yeah.
12? Okay. So I mean, we could still. And I can't remember, Judge, we talked about it, I can't remember what we said. Do you guys allow preliminary grading at your own risk and preliminary plat approval?
If we have a grading.
With the grading agreement, yes, and the escrows and everything in
Yes.
place, yes.
Okay, you do.
Development fees
Okay.
paid, yes.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, this was very helpful. I think it gives us guidance on, you know, what we need to tweak, and you'll see us again sometime.
Thank you, thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
guys.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, yeah, it's probably Sure.
The van?
I saw it. It was when I came, sorry I was late, we got stuck in the rain, I mean, rain on 484 never is good. Thanks for being here. Thank you.
Yeah, see ya.
We're a smaller group.
With smaller boards.
A little more air.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here, I know.
So I'm Jay Rose with LGI Homes.
Steve
Drumsky, Summit Tech Engineering.
Wait one moment, just have somebody go.
We made that motion.
We mumbled on his way out that we're taking a short recess.
Does that count?
I don't know. No, 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 just.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just wanna make sure.
Thanks. LGI petition for annexation discussion.
Hello, so, my name is Jay Rose and I'm with LGI.
Steve Drumsky, Summit Tech Engineering.
So I guess whoever takes it, well, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Steve has kind of taken the bull by the horns a little bit, kind of on the annexation discussion, and he's met with the township, and has had discussion with Jessica, and so I've been a little bit out of the mix, getting updates kind of after the fact, but I think we're down to the situation with that south 76 acres. The road is kind of a driveway now, but it's a public road on the south side, and that's the issue, right?
If we did annex that now before everything is built out there, Public Works would have to maintain another road there. We don't really have a whole lot of equipment to maintain gravel roads, so that would be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, right now the county, or the
The
township
township takes care of
fully
it.
maintains it, so.
When I met with them several weeks ago, they were very open to the annexation. They referenced the existing annexation agreement. They were fine with it, but the one question they had before they approved it was, we want to make sure the city is going to take over maintenance of this because we don't want to annex it and then be responsible for the maintenance. And so that's kind of where we are right now. They're open to it, they're willing to let the city annex it, but of course the cost of maintenance is the driver like most things. So I think what we're looking for today is, we're not here to discuss the concept plan of what LGI has prepared on this larger site at this point. What we're really looking for is advice or direction on how we can move forward with annexing the 76 acres that's agreeable to the township and the city of Montrose.
Is that gravel road, that 75th Street?
Yeah, and right now, I believe that might be a road that we plow in the winter, but we don't maintain it as far as gravel, because I think that's where the Schwartzers live. And that is a road we plow, but we do not maintain it.
I know Danny's not here right now, but did he give any insight into what kind of cost the city would incur to take on maintenance or plowing of that road? Because I thought he had said that we don't have equipment to plow
Right.
dirt roads.
Well, apparently we have something that'll plow it, because I think we do plow one of those roads out there. I can't remember if it's 75th or one up from there. But we do plow one of those gravel roads or driveways. It's sort of like a big driveway.
Mhm.
Not really a full road. And then, of course, once it develops, that wouldn't be an issue. I mean, we would maintain the roads they put in, but it wouldn't be a
That
gravel
would
road.
be tar road.
Yeah.
There's really two roads, if we're looking at the whole picture. There's the 75th, which does go to the one homestead.
And 80th.
And 80th, and 75th is, I think, of less concern. As we understand it, that's supposed to be an arterial road, there's a boulevard, some trees, things like that. So that's in our planning and due diligence. We understand that that's gonna have to go in. But I believe 80th to the south is really the key here. It looks like there's a homestead, and then, is that a homestead with the farm on it, or just some working buildings at the end? I see a home there.
Yeah.
So perhaps two families?
On 80th, you're
Yes.
talking?
Yep.
I think it's a farmstead.
Yeah, there's kind of a standalone home.
Our property ends to the west of that homestead, so 80th Street, for some reason, if that was ever redeveloped or upgraded, it would not go all the way to that end homestead, because the property boundary does not go that far east. So that's really the complexity here with trying to annex the 76 acres.
We have no idea what it takes to maintain the dirt roads?
We don't maintain our roads.
Right,
Yeah.
So it
don't have
wouldn't just be
anything else out.
additional, it wouldn't just be additional man hours, it would be whatever equipment is necessary would
To
have to
maintain
be.
those roads.
It would be all the initial costs involved or contracting it out if there's a,
How busy is that?
And we don't
road right now?
know how long it'll be until the
How
development is
busy is
built
that
out.
road right now, do we know?
Probably not
There's
busy,
like
I
one house
mean,
on it.
yeah.
2 houses.
But I
And,
mean,
and it's a
still-
dead end, it's
yeah.
not a through. It, you know, it goes right up to someone's house. It, really, it's like a long driveway.
It's not like Clementa.
I mean, and then there's also the scenario that, okay, if we were gonna develop that, you know, tomorrow, you know, what would be, and across the street is this township, county, you know, not the city. What would be our responsibility, you know, would we would escrow for our half of the road? You know, because what I'm getting at is, okay,
I've never done an annexation,
Yeah.
honestly, so I am not as
Is-
familiar with that, so.
as you know, that this issue would even exist, even probably if we were developing that 76 acres now, because, you know, what's gonna be the cost responsibilities from us? You know, we still don't have a paved street along that south end. You know, unless the developer was required to build the whole thing, or we contribute our half and someone else contributes the other half. Otherwise, you know, the potential for that gravel road still exists. At that time.
We don't even need access off of that road at this point. It could be 10, 15, 20 years in all honesty before the development goes that far south. I hope it doesn't, but it could. So there's, I think about 40 lots that we have penciled in based on your assumed zoning ordinance in that area when it's annexed in. So we could come off of Clementa with at least one or possibly two drives. But the lot right now goes to the center point of the road. So we can't annex that land without also annexing half of the road. If we could, and we could leave it the way it is, status quo, I think that would be an option for us, but.
Part of our orderly annexation agreement includes, pretty much anything we annex in that touches a road, we own the road. We have to take care of it, we maintain it.
The entire right-of-way.
Of a township road, obviously, not a county.
Not like 110 or Clementa, no, but, yeah, the township road.
So in your scenario, of, you know, if you were to develop and you don't need that road to develop, the city would be faced with essentially forever maintaining that gravel road until, I guess, until the property itself would develop, if ever.
What a lot of cities in this situation do, as Jay mentioned, is he would put half of the money into an escrow and then the city would manage that. And then when it inevitably develops south, you would use that money in escrow to pay for the north half of that road. You know, unfortunately, no one knows what construction costs are going to be in 20 years, so there's some math involved in that. That is an option. You know, we'd be open to abandoning the road or acquiring it with an access easement for the two properties. Really, there's no discussion item out of bounds.
Yeah, because I think, okay, vacate the road. Now you got two landowners that they've got a pretty long driveway to maintain. And I'm sure, I would think that homeowner right now, if they're getting that road plowed, why would they want to own it? But, I mean, it's an option.
That would be an interesting discussion.
We are talking about 80th right here now, correct? We're on the
I believe we're talking about 80th.
Yeah. And the township currently plows that, do we know, or does the homeowners plow it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
My biggest concern would be maintaining that road for the next 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, we are talking about having to purchase equipment to maintain said gravel road.
Or rent equipment
Or
or
rent,
something.
or, yeah, something along those lines. I mean, I think it would be nice to know who plows that currently.
And if the owners back there would want that road as just their driveway.
Right, yeah, that too.
Could be a shared agreement with the township. If you have to acquire it, you could have an agreement. I don't know the state statute number, 80E perhaps, but pay them to maintain it or plow it, keep the status quo, and just absorb that cost. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but I don't think there'd be acquisition of new equipment necessary if Woodland Township is maintaining and plowing it now. They need to be regraded about, if it's a through street with a lot of traffic, every 4 to 5 years. So 2 houses is about 15 trips a day is what we average.
It all depends how much, heavy farm equipment is beating up that road.
I know we're not talking about the development piece of it, but I mean, that to me is pretty much what concerns me the most here is, what you guys are looking to build there, how many homes you're looking to bring in and what we can sustain as a city with our infrastructure and what those costs will be. And that, to me is more, it needs to be part of the discussion with this, because if we are gonna bring this in, we need to know what that looks like for ourselves moving forward, if we can actually sustain that. Or if we're just bringing on 2 parcels of land that we have to maintain, we're not gonna see anything out of for a while. So that's my concern.
So was it 300 that was 40? I'm just gonna use the last 3 digits because I'm not rattling off the whole thing. Which one was 40 houses?
Which parcel?
The bottom one, the 200?
Or the 300?
Yes, so there's a creek that bisects the 76 acres. So we're requesting annexation for 2 parcels. The one in the northwest, there's no issues there.
A 25 acre one.
And the one to the south is the 76 acres. There's a creek that bisects that, cuts it in half. You have the zoning ordinance that requires a large lot to protect that creek. So everything south of the creek on our 76 acres is only going to be accessed by Clementa. And that, at this point, we estimate to be 40 to 45 houses. So
Just south of the creek.
south of the creek, the intersection of 80th and Clementa, 40 to 45 houses. And that's today's estimate
And how many north of the creek?
on this particular parcel.
Yeah.
85 to 90.
On the 76 acre.
Yeah. So that's about 130, 140 homes.
Roughly how many on the 25 acre one?
$25.
160.
I do agree with David on this also. I mean,
That puts us close to our limit.
Just those 2 parcels.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah.
What limit are you referring to?
Wastewater?
Our wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, right now, that number is what?
Somewhere around 200, 300 homes,
More
right?
homes.
Yeah, I mean, we're nearing our capacity right now based on what's currently platted, basically. So we're in the middle of a facility study right now to do an expansion. So an expansion would be needed to really accommodate, like we've talked about, to accommodate, any development down there, an expansion would be needed.
Is that study underway?
Yes.
Do you have an estimated completion date?
I think it was early next year,
That sounds about right.
because they are doing theirs as well. They anticipate
For
theirs
the
being
water
done at the end
plant,
of the year.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just wastewater.
Yeah.
Get started later.
Yeah, March, I think it's the end of March actually, because that's corresponds with our PFA financing deadline, so. That would be when the preliminary study would be wrapping up.
If this were to be annexed in, how quickly are you looking at putting houses up? I guess is the question. If it gets annexed in now, are you looking at springtime, you wanna go put 20 in right away? Or are you looking 2 years from now, you're gonna start putting
I
houses
mean,
up?
we would wanna work on preliminary plat, this winter. And, but home construction won't start until 24 for sure. But we'd like to get, preliminary plat approval, spring, final plat, and we kind of run out of construction season, so probably even do the site improvements, the grading, the utilities in 24 and build homes, midsummer, late summer of 24.
I just think without Danny or knowing the cost that this is just discussion, but just without Danny's input or knowing what the township pays to maintain that quarter-mile long road, mile. How long is that? Any idea?
Half mile.
Give or take 2 feet.
It's a quarter mile.
Yeah, it's a quarter.
I definitely feel like we,
More information.
yeah, we need to figure out some more information here.
If we can figure out that, I'm personally okay with annexing all of this in. Granted, our study comes back with, that we're okay with it, but I don't think that we'd be looking at being able to approve any kind of a plat of any sort until probably next summer. That would be my guess, just based on when we get our study stuff done for our wastewater treatment plant.
You mean, and you're referring to a preliminary plat?
Yeah, or without approving any plats in general until we have that study done. That would be my thought. I don't know what yours is, Jess, but I can't really say that I want to plan for more homes until we know what we can sustainably take on.
And I'm sorry, the study, the objective of the study is to determine the costs of that expansion or what type of expansion? I mean, or what? Because it's already known you've got a limit of about 200 more lots.
Well, all of that's involved in this study, right?
Right, it would be what expansion would be needed, what the cost would be, what the timeline of that would be, and then it would be applying for financing, what the funding or financing would be the next step after the report, yes.
That's just on the plat side of things. As far as the annexation goes, I think we all just need more information from probably the township and Danny, what it would take for us to maintain 80th, or if those homes just want that road. I mean, do those two homeowners want to just take that as their driveway, or one of them want to take it as their driveway? Nice long private drive. I just think as far as that specific road goes, we don't have enough information.
Or what it would be to maintain it.
Well, that's part of that is, you know, the cost of maintenance is one thing, you know, in terms of vacating or giving it up. Is the city okay with that? You know, obviously. you
If
have
those
to make
homeowners
that
were to want it,
You'd have to make that determination as well.
you're talking about if they were to want that
Right.
road. I mean, if they want to take on a gravel road, I'd be okay with not maintaining it, so I'd be fine with vacating it if they were to want it.
Or the township's been maintaining it, do you think they'd say, yeah, we'll start maintaining it now?
There's any little farmers that have longer driveways than that and maintain it, so.
True.
I mean, so, I mean, I know this is an annexation discussion, but talking about kind of the sewer availability and, you know, considering the fact that someone else was in here before, what's kind of the list of platted lots or basically who's ahead of us for that 200? This is blunt as I guess as I can ask the question. You know,
Yeah.
we've got the project that we've got approved,
And
Northridge,
that's part of them, that's,
27.
those are counted in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
The-
Creekside?
by
That's
counting
already-
in there, that's part of
All of
the-
that area is all already counted,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
Right.
Yep.
Basically anything that's preliminary platted or above, that has a current preliminary plat
I
or,
think like the preserve.
is not part of this 200.
no, it is, that,
It is.
It is part of
yeah.
it. Okay, so like our.
That's why I say anything that's platted, basically, if we were to instantaneously build a home on every single lot that's platted,
We'd be pretty full.
we'd be full.
And doesn't that include unbuilt in Waverly as well?
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's-
So a lot of it depends
Waverly
on-
is-
We take
that you're-
Waverly.
Yeah, all of their wastewater comes from Montrose.
Yeah, so that kind of answers the questions. Really, those 200 tickets
All right.
have
Already
plenty-
accounted for, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's why we've mentioned that, any part of a plat approval, if the council wanted to even consider anything, would be a phasing plan and how
Very
fast are
closely
you gonna
monitored.
grow, would have to be probably part of the development agreement, you can only build whatever we figure out that can be, if any, or what the timing of that is with respect to a plant upgrade.
But yeah, in terms of the annexation, yeah, obviously, yeah, there's that question of who maintains it now, obviously, and then will they keep maintaining it? I don't know who that is.
Do you fully expect that the council will approve or fund or otherwise authorize future growth in this area as a generality?
As opposed to a moratorium.
I mean, would you ever say, we understand that we need to increase capacity to grow, but we don't want to grow here, so we're not going to make the investments in this area?
You're talking specifically south of town, or?
Even the land that is within the city of Montrose limits. that's
Our
not built.
land south of 12,
Yeah.
that's, yeah. If annexation wasn't part of it, if we were just looking at the land that's already in the city limits, this development area was called South Ridge, and that's what LGI, that's what we've continued to just call it South Ridge. That's what the Rick Harrison plan was when they did a concept plan for it. So that portion that was annexed at, I think it was annexed at that time, anyway.
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
Yep.
Yeah, so even if we were just gonna develop that, is there concern with that being, that's on the south side? Maybe not where you would wanna see your development allotments.
I am okay with developing that way where there's a little more room where you can spread out with stuff, but I also am very cautious about sustainably doing it. But as far as growth happens, I'm okay with growth south on 25. I think there's more opportunity for how things can get laid out there versus middle of town over here. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
Well, a lot of it is if there's any major infrastructure hurdles, you know, to this area south of town. You know, there was mention about need for a water tower. You know, is there certain things that, and obviously there's the sewer issue, but is there things that make the Southridge area south unique, that certain things kind of have to happen before that area can be developed? Even though it's already in the city limits, but is there other major hurdles?
In my mind, it just needs to be sustainable, the steps that we take to go that, any direction really. I mean, if there was more developments even farther north, it has to be sustainable from an engineering standpoint if we're gonna do any kind of large expansion. But at the same time, if we want the things in town that we do, stores, shopping areas, we do need more rooftops. So they kind of go hand in hand. And I don't know if you guys know anybody that can help out with some of that stuff, of other developers that may want to bring in businesses or box store type shopping areas. But
And like it was said, it follows the rooftops, you know.
We do about a third of all the multifamily and industrial work in the Twin Cities metro area, so we've got some contacts in the, I guess Rolodex is too old for me, but that's where it is.
Still have to use it.
Yeah, yep. So, you know, making those connections is not a challenge, but to be blunt, as Jay said, pretend there was no annexation and we were just going in with what's already in city limits. Will there be a spot for this development when the study is done? Will you accept the idea of growth in this area and plan for it?
I'd be open to it. Yeah, I'd be open to it
As long
too.
as, like I said, my main concern is our infrastructure and
Yep.
what we can withhold. And I think that, speak for everybody here, we all want to see the right growth. We don't want to just see a tremendous amount of growth at once, but we want to see the right growth. We want to be able to sustain it, be able to ensure that we're giving everybody here the right things that they need. And so, I mean, we have some needs as far as the city goes, and I don't think that there's an area that we would say no to, as long as it fits in with what we can offer. I'm all for it.
Okay, same.
From an infrastructure perspective, I mean, we have sewer and we have water that is oversized, and the piping to get from there to our plants is definitely adequate.
Mhm.
So that backbone of infrastructure for sewer and water to the site is in place.
Mhm.
And
where is that?
so there's water main comes down Clementa Avenue, all the way to the, basically, it would be the northwest corner of the existing city limits there. That's already annexed in. So it actually goes past the north parcel there that they're proposing to annex. Water main already goes past that on the west side, correct? And then on the east side, the sewer comes in through those three homes that come off of Highway 25. It goes in between there and comes into this site, and it's a larger diameter that's been sized for that whole area. I think the biggest challenge from an infrastructure perspective down there is probably the roadway connections.
Part of the reason for the desire to annex the 25 acres in the northwest corner is because the only access is through 3 existing residential houses, and we want to disrupt those folks as little as possible. So we need another connection out to Clementa. So I'm not hearing any issues with that parcel. It sounds like we got some things to iron out on the south parcel though.
Well, and I think, I'm not against bringing in the annexation. I just want to bring it at the right time, to where we're not just, again, not ready for what you guys want to plan, and then we're sitting there, we're maintaining something that we don't have anything overseen of.
Yeah, and we certainly, aren't developing wouldn't be developing the entire
No,
thing
for
at,
sure.
at a time. And that's kind of the heart of the issue is if we were gonna develop the whole thing, well, then there's the issue of, it's still kind of on the line that we, half of it, but yeah, I think that's the issue, is how long before that road is essentially improved. But also is, you know, does the city want to see that, right now, that road just goes up to that first farm? Does the city want to see that road extended all the way through? You know, the problem is to the east, that's, that's out in the county now. You know, that's not under consideration of being annexed now. But yeah, it's kind of a question of, does the city and the county want to see that road?
Well, I think that's before we said, well, we'll give it up as a driveway, I would think we'd want to have some
80th
kind
or
of thinking
75th?
about.
Yeah, which one
I
we
think
got?
we're talking about 80.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about 75th, no.
75th will go through as an arterial road.
Essentially as with our development, you know, because we surround that area. Or we, but,
You just, the only thing you wouldn't have is that one farmhouse on 75th.
right.
Yeah.
I think the comp transportation plan that I shared, I think that future major collector is, lines up with, I think it's 75th.
Yeah.
Because then it ties into Armitage on the east side of 25.
Yeah, that's the one that kind of angles. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, it
Just-
is.
Just
yep.
under the hill, just north of the hill.
That 75th
But-
is,
Looks like this is running down here.
Oh, that's 80th too.
Yeah.
So there's both, actually. Yep, correct.
yeah, 80th is shown on the comp plan as a through.
Yeah.
But
You know, that's-
75th, if I could see that again.
I would see that, even that's on the south edge of our huge AUAR, our comp plan, comp plan boundary area. 80th is on the very south tip of that, so.
It's not on very many of our maps.
Yeah, to try to do a little bit more infill development north of there would be, I guess what I'm saying is I don't see that 80th Street being improved to a large collector road for a really long time. Doesn't mean you want to eliminate, give it up
Yeah.
though,
Right.
correct.
At that point though, I think you'd be looking at those houses would probably no longer want to live there if they're completely surrounded with development. That would just be, but
Right.
But yeah, it's, you know, it's still, it's a maintenance issue, right? It's a cost. That's the question at hand, and
I know, I think Steve, you emailed me and talked about possibly doing the northern one first, and then maybe the southern one later, and then maybe just not having to pay 2 annexation fees.
Yeah, I haven't run this by Jay. so-
Oh.
He's over there like, what? So thanks for bringing that up. So, you know, our goal is to get to the finish line, and so we can have a viable project when the infrastructure is there. And one of the items for annexation is a $10,000 annexation fee. So if there's no issues with the northern 25 acres, you know, I need to look out for Jay and LGI and say, okay, if we just move forward with the 25 acres, there's a $10,000 application fee. And then if we hold back on the 76 acres for some future date, is there another $10,000 application fee? Or can we have a developer's agreement through this that says, hey, this $10,000 is for the entire project and the city understands that it's all interrelated. I don't want Jay to have to pay $20,000 for a $10,000 application.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'd be okay with
I
that.
could see an agreement.
because what the scenario, so LGI has all of this under contract. We don't own any of the South Ridge or these annexation parcels, but we have that entire portion under contract, and, you know, I don't know, maybe we could this, of course, isn't up to me, but, you know, and it takes participation, obviously, of the seller of if there's a staged buy down, you know, of this, where, you know, if that is an option, then, you know, something like, you know, in the developer's agreement, you know, reference to the annexation fee that, you know, that if, you know, something noted that this 76 acres, if it's annexed, you know, at a later date, whatever, if that date is defined, you know,
That might,
fee gets consideration, so.
that, from my perspective, that would allow the city to, you know, get the application fee, you know, get some understanding of the maintenance, the scheduling, the homeowner's opinions, all those really important things. But it also gives some assurances to LGI Homes that, you know, we've submitted this, our cards are on the table. Here's your $10,000. Can we move forward with what we do know? And we'll figure out this stuff as we go. And maybe there's a couple-year limit or whatever it might be, but you know, we certainly don't want this issue to hold up a very large project for the city of Montrose.
Because you want to develop up here by the 25 acres first, and this other
Yeah,
piece
because that's where the
later
water
on.
is and the sewer,
Right.
and
So-
it's obviously closer to everything else, you know.
And then this
to
piece
12.
later on.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it just makes sense, because it's
Yeah.
closer to 12, the access point is where the sewer is. That 25 really, without that 25 acres, the problem is, your maps, the portion of South Ridge,
It's
and
like-
then there's that little remnant, and then they're meeting at a corner, those two properties, they're meeting at a corner, and of course, that's where a wetland is.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to do that all as one phase, because you got sewer on one side, water on the other, all the homes in between want both. You know, so that 25 acres makes a lot of sense, because we can avoid that wetland.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you weren't looking at that and this were first. This was just later on, you're just trying to make sure you have all the puzzle pieces together before you start drawing on it.
Correct.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'd be okay with, we split it into two, and
So, yeah.
And
so
like I
what
said, I don't know, you know, that's something I need to talk with people on my end about. And obviously, like I said, there's a seller that may say, nope, all or nothing. And, you know, that's, you know, I don't think LGI would have a problem with splitting it. It's just, you know, getting the seller to agree to that.
Well, once we know where you're at with that, we can have our attorneys draft up like a joint resolution for us in the township to annex at least the north piece in, if not the south by then as well.
Yeah, I would still, if we can find out the
Yep.
information that we
We're gonna
kind
start
of need to
looking into
know about the maintenance of 80th,
Yep.
then, you know, that hopefully shouldn't take too long to figure that out. We could know that sooner than,
Yeah, we'll have Public
Sooner than
Works
later.
look into that and kind of crunch some numbers, see what that would cost them. And they might need to talk to the township and see what that entails. if
Or
they're
if-
not doing-
right, and if the town, what it would cost to pay the township to do it,
Yeah.
or if the
Or
owners
the
would
options,
want.
yeah, and I don't know what the
Yeah.
what legality is there. We can just ask them or.
Is 75th paved?
No.
No. The homeowner that lives on that maintains it themselves.
Yeah, and we plow it.
That's why it's not the same issue.
That's why the maintenance isn't a problem on 75th, because they do it themselves.
but it is, it's a public road, but they do it themselves.
Well.
They're the only ones that live there.
Yeah, I
and-
think it's a public road, but yeah, they're the only ones that drive on it and live on there, so. They maintain
It's
it.
essentially their driveway.
As a previous employee too, so.
Did you have this conversation when the other land was annexed?
I don't think
No
any
idea.
of us were here when that
Okay.
happened.
I don't think anyone at this table was anywhere remotely
Yeah.
involved in that. So, couldn't tell you.
For our term.
So is there anything that I or LGI can help you with before you go and reach out to the township with your questions. If there is, Jessica, please let me know. Happy to help.
Yeah, just want to make sure we cross all of our Ts, dot all of our Is, and do it the right way, so.
Yep. And we've met with staff before on kind of just a real rough concept review, and, we'd like to set something up here in the somewhat near future and kind of keep things moving in some direction.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for waiting around.
Yeah.
Gotta run to another meeting.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
So closed session, but tell me whatever you can, and tell me to buzz off if you want to. The previous discussion with that land, because, we have Northridge and LGI had that Parkview property. You guys probably talked about that one. And then, but we passed on that one, and then we had a few remainder lots up on Breckenridge. So this was all the property in between that, right?
Yep.
And it sounds like they want to develop some of it or part of it, and what's kind of the pathway with that
I think,
property?
they want to develop that square there,
Yeah,
this,
okay, thanks.
Top
this
third.
piece.
Yep, the one that comes
Okay.
off of Breckenridge
That comes
and
down
with
from Cole
access.
and then over to 7th. So here's your new, this
Yep.
is where your 27 homes are going, and they're kind of like right next to that.
And their preliminary plat is approved by planning commission,
Yep.
contingent on staff comments. So they do approve.
Yeah, that area there.
Yep.
And then- Okay, so theirs doesn't come down here that they would connect into 7th?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I'd heard something about concern with one access. That maybe was with the first.
Well, that's what we
Yeah,
wanted to talk
right.
about,
Yeah.
is that we
Yes.
needed that access.
Yeah, that it's tougher than to do
Yeah.
just half of it because it adds all of that on
Yep.
these already with one access, but. Yeah, and that area, because, with Parkview, part of that would have had to have been sewer to the north, right?
Yes.
So the last thing we have, this one should
Yep.
go pretty quick. Resolution 2022-30. So this just allows assessments for unpaid utility payments.
Utilities and.
Utilities and garbage.
Through
Yeah.
Randy's Republic.
Thanks, Jake.
And this is
Thank you
something
all.
that we do every year, just has to be done by the end of October.
Correct. And there is a list included that was what was current as of the setting of the meeting agenda, that's already gone down, and it will continue to. The final send-off won't be till late in November, to the county. So I'll be sending out, and, after reporting back, seeing what we have in our system, and then hearing back from the public on what's paid, we'll send out another notice. This is still out. These are gonna go to assessments.
People are getting letters saying that so if they dispute their garbage or their
If it's garbage,
utilities,
they need to call.
contact Randy's and
Republic,
dispute it
and then
with
if-
them.
And if it's a utility dispute, they.
And I've included the
but-
contact information for Randy's Republic, their collections with that one, but we've still gotten some calls regarding Randy's.
And yes, and so this is just property tax assessment for unpaid utilities and garbage charges, nothing else.
Nothing else, yep. Oh, yeah, this isn't like
yes,
for
I
the
just-
project.
Still
this
is.
isn't
I just
for the road
wanted to
project,
make that
this
very
is
clear
just our
that this
annual
is-
property tax assessments for
Yes.
unpaid charges.
Utilities and garbage,
Yep.
that's it, nothing
Okay.
else included in this.
Yep.
With that, I'll make motion to approve resolution 2022-30.
I will second.
Further discussion? Mr. Paradise?
Aye.
Ms. Andrea?
Aye.
Mr. Solars?
Aye.
I'll vote yes, motion passes 4-0.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Ms. Andrea?
Aye.
I'll vote aye. Mr. Solars?
Aye.
Mr. Paradise?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, we're adjourned.
Oh, gosh.